guys, welcome to another video. Today I want to go into my personal settings in RACEROOM, especially concerning the force feedback. So first of all, I mean, if you know my channel, you might be aware that I spend most of my time in iRacing. I'm pretty much an iRacing fanboy, sorry for that, but it's the way it is. But I always have been in love with RACEROOM. It's the sim I started out with, and I'm coming back every time when they release new stuff, and it's got a soft spot, you know, in my heart, so to say. Of course, I have to point out that this is very, very subjective. First of all, it's about your personal preferences, but it's also important to note that on different equipment, your settings might vary dramatically, really. So it's important that you know on which equipment I am. So at the moment, I am using, for quite some time now, the old Fanatec version, wheelbase version 2. It's pretty similar to the V2.5, so it might be this pretty much the same settings on the 2.5. So first we are going to look at the in-game settings, on the in-game force feedback settings. You have to go to options, there you go to controls, and under controls you find the force feedback. These two are pretty much self-explanatory, the essential settings. Of course, you have to click force feedback, and you might have to click inverted force feedback or unclick it. You will know what you have to do when you try it out. If the car feels completely wrong, go back to the setup and unclick it or click it, vice versa. So the way you set up your force feedback strength is with the force feedback meter. I would recommend using the key bindings. In my case, I put it on F, so I can bring it up as whenever I like. And then you've got, for every car, you've got a multiplier, a force feedback multiplier. I would recommend key binding these as well. So whenever I'm checking out a new car, when they launch a new pack or whatever, I go out with the car, I put up my force feedback meter, and I see how, if it clips or if it doesn't clip. Clipping means that it is above the red line on the force feedback meter. It should be on the green side of things. If it's too high, you gotta reduce your multiplier, or you gotta reduce your force feedback strength overall. So in the end, what I did was I decided to go down a bit on the overall force feedback strength. That gives me more accurate, you know, a more accurate possibility to use the multiplier for every single car in a way that makes the most sense for me. You have to play around with that quite a bit. When we look into the car setups, you see over here the force feedback multiplier. That's what I'm talking about. So you can keybind these and change them for every car. You just have to do it once. The game will remember what the force feedback multiplier for every single car would be. Secondly, the force feedback minimum force compresses the force feedback output by raising the zero torque to the selected percentage of torque. So it says here most high-end wheels should not need this at all, and most low-end wheels should work well with a setting of just 2 to 3%. So I guess my wheel might be in between. It's not a low end, but it's neither a high-end wheel. It's probably a mid-end wheel, but still I had the feeling that I like to have a bit more of minimum force. They explain it here what it does. If the wheel feels as if it is not outputting anything in the middle, it might be an indication that you should turn this setting up if you are getting a rumble or oscillations on a straight, or if you feel a notch when weaving on a straight, then the minimum force is most likely set too high. So this is something you have to try out. On my settings, I put it to 2%, makes the most sense for me. Next one is the force feedback maximum force. This is easy, just put it to 100%. And the last one, the stationary friction. This controls the strength of the tire friction force felt while stationary or driving very slowly in pits, for example. So I put it to 50%. This is the sweet spot for me. Not that important, to be honest, but still something that makes a bit of a difference. And in the end, we have these three values we can set that are immersion enhanced, you know. So for me, this is quite important. I tweaked around quite a bit with these to have more like an immersive feel about the cars. In the end, the engine vibrations, I put it to 10%. I mean, brings vibration into the force feedback coming from the engine of the car. The bump amplification, it exaggerates all vertical forces. Vertical forces, for example, curbs, of course, but also bumps in the surface of the track. So this is important for me. 10% seemed like the best value for me. The last one, the gear shift effects, again, hugely personal preference. For me, 5% is the best. So these in-game settings are pretty easy to set up. When it gets tricky, for me at least, it was when I had to set up my wheel. So I have to point out the version 2, it is not working with the Fanatec software. You have to put in your numbers directly on the wheel, but it's essentially the same thing. You can do it in your Fanatec software, or you can do it on your wheel. And if you happen to own a different wheel, it might be a starting point to at least check out if it works for you. It might, and it might not. So the first thing we can change is sensitivity, SEN. It's got a range, in my case, it's got a range from 90 to 900, or you can set it to auto. In my case, I set it to auto. That means that the game itself can change it appropriately. So I don't have to change it for every single car. The second thing we can change is the overall force feedback strength. In my case, I can put it to 100, maximum power. You have to check it out. You don't want to break your wrists. If you're on a direct drive, it might be completely different. I don't know. But on a belt driven like the V2, 100% is perfectly fine. Next thing we can change is shock, SHO. I put it to 100%. That means that the information coming from the game, for example, the vertical vibrations going over curbs, stuff like that, is transferred to the max. So I can change it as you can see in game. The next one is ABS range. At first I was a bit confused because on my wheel there is no ABS setting, despite it's called BLI on the V2. Might be the same on your wheel. Gotta check it out. ABS range, as it says here, this feature can give you a direct and feel-able feedback about your brake inputs. You know, especially when the ABS kicks in, you feel it on ABS equipped cars. So I put that on 80. 100 was a bit too much. 80 seemed to be the sweet spot. Next one was a bit confusing to me. It's called DRI drift mode. The way they explain it, it almost works like a power steering. It reduces the basic dampening of the wheel and makes the wheel turn faster. So I tweaked around quite a bit with this setting. You can turn it off. You can turn it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in my case. I put it at 2. At 2 it just feels right. I can't really put my finger on it because the way they explain it doesn't really make sense to me. I'm kind of lacking a proper explanation how it really feels if you change this value. Just try, playing around with it a bit and see what your personal feeling is and set it appropriately. The way they explain it, the force pushes the wheel into a special direction. I put that to the max, to 120. So I amplified this value to the max. The spring setting pulls the wheel towards the center. As you experience in a real car. So I put that to 100%. And the most important thing in RACEROOM for me was the damper. I was playing around with the damper for quite a bit. I changed it back up and down. And after they put out the Porsche pack, I had the best experience when I completely shut it off. So no damper for me. Because in RACEROOM, the biggest problem I have with the feel of the car is, how I put it, it's kind of a train-like effect compared to other sims, compared to iRacing, compared to AMS2 as well, and even rFactor 2, which I have not much experience in, but I do own it and I checked it out. So that is, for me, the biggest problem. So when I put off dampers, that effect is toned down. So that's about it. That's my personal force feedback settings in RACEROOM as of August 2023. You know, this all might change due to future changes to the tire model or whatever. But as of now, this is how it feels the best for me. Of course, it is hugely dependent on your equipment and on your personal preference. But anyways, as a starting point, it might help some of you at least to check it out. I hope you will have fun doing that and you will find the sweet spot for you in order to get more out of the game and a more, realistic feeling or whatever feeling you might like to have. So thanks a lot for watching. If you like this video or want to see more on this channel, please consider subscribing or liking the video. It always helps, the algorithm in YouTube, so other people might find this. And as always, hope seeing you on the track and have a good one. Cheers. Bye bye.